You're hanging out in the House of Sunny podcast, where it's always sunny, mostly because of your host, comedian and YouTuber, Sunny Lohman. Want to know what Sunny and her friends are thinking about this week? Well, here she is, Sunny Lohman.
Hey, welcome to the House of Sunny podcast. We're back after kind of a long absence. Thanks for color coordinating with me today, Doug.
Do what I can.
For those
on the
of
fashion
us,
front.
for those of you listening, somehow Doug and I both wore kind of pink today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Felt like one of those days.
Yeah.
Psychically linked
Something.
on the fashion front. It's kind of
It
a
ain't even
summery
Valentine's Day. It
That's
is.
right.
Well, yeah, except I'm wearing a sweater. So it says love. I don't know
It's
if it's
Breast Cancer
backwards.
Awareness Hour.
That's right. Well, you have breast cancer? Is that what you...
Unfortunately, it's possible.
All that soy. You got
Well,
boobies and...
ever since I started identifying as a Chinese woman, which I started, when was that, last fall on the podcast?
Yes.
I've been getting mammograms and pap smears and all that stuff, but so I'm waiting the results. We'll see.
So your goal is to get breast cancer. If you get breast cancer, then now you're truly a woman.
Well, and I'd be a victim too. I mean,
yes.
You know how much credit I get on Twitter?
Oh, yeah.
As a Chinese woman with breast cancer.
Minority, female, sick, trans.
Grants
the
galore.
Only thing that you are missing is Muslim. You could be a Muslim Chinese trans.
An Uyghur?
Yeah.
Like the Uyghurs?
Yes, you're a Uyghur. Is it
Uyghur
or Uyghur? I just like
Uyghur,
saying Uyghur.
Wagger. Let's call the whole thing off. Yeah, tomato. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy for you, Doug. I'm happy that
you.
you're sinking so low on the victim chart that you're actually becoming morally virtuous. Finally,
on the brave and stunning graph, I'm just like going exponentially up the brave and stunning chart.
It's an exponential growth.
That's right.
Man, I'm sinking. I'm sinking. Yeah.
What's wrong?
If I'm trans, then I'm a white male. So.
Well, what do you identify as right now? Are you still a woman?
Yeah, I guess I'm still female, but I would like to identify as a minority. I would like to be Black. Well, I have a little Japanese, but I would really rather be Black. Yeah, because I think I could become famous.
Cool. Oh my God. Absolutely. You could certainly get on a commercial today, because every single commercial I see, apparently the entire country is now Black and Asian.
I could be on the cover of Vogue just because I'm Black. I've noticed this for months now, that all the covers are Black and brown.
Yeah.
White people just really are being erased. We've had our day in the sun.
Yeah, we had a good run.
Yeah. Yeah. It's time for Black and brown to shine. So I'm willing to make space.
Are you feeling good?
I'm feeling okay. That's not good, but I'm feeling okay. Mm-hmm. So I still have the sick victimology. What do you call that? A rank. I have the sick rank. I don't know what the words are.
Challenged.
Well, like, what's the word for a level of intersectional?
Female sick woman
ranking. You know what I'm saying?
I give it a 2.3.
Like we're in a gymnastics.
I'm a 7 right now with this breast cancer test waiting.
Yeah.
Chinese woman. I'm probably in a 7 category. You're like a 2.3.
Yeah, and for a white male, that's a stunning achievement.
Thank you.
That's great. Yeah. All right. Well, today we were going to talk about this article that a friend of ours sent to us from American Greatness. We're going to get into it. It basically talks about the mechanics of how this crazy critical race theory and this postmodernist stuff actually makes it into the culture. So like, where did this really severe woke cancel culture stuff mechanically come from? Why is it everywhere? How did it get everywhere? And I think we talk a lot about theories and it's very abstract and it's okay. Yeah, that's interesting. We can see that we're sort of living under this critical race theory ideology everywhere in culture today. But how? Like, why? And this article is so interesting. And I don't know if it's true or not, but we're going to talk about it because it's so interesting. And then we're going to talk about Harry and Meghan. We have a royal report. And I thought I would also just get into the Fauci emails because I won't get into too much detail about them, but I guess I have a take that I think I'm hearing some other people make the same take, but I think it's an important take because people get really bogged down in the details and they forget to sort of step back and go, who is this guy and what's really happening? If we're going to judge Fauci, how do we judge him? How do we step back and make that judgment? Do we overanalyze his emails and try to find the smoking gun? I feel like we're so obsessed with needing like this level of certainty that's not possible in order to morally condemn somebody. And I maybe Doug, maybe you can comment on that with all of your background in history and postmodernism and stuff, like where that maybe that comes from, because it's an epistemological issue. It's like the OJ trial, every on and on and on, where we can't judge people if we don't have them saying, like, if Fauci didn't write an email saying, so I'm going to lie about this and then I'm going to do this. And then I'm, because I got this funding over here and I'm on the board over there and I'm friends with Bill Gates and I want my butt kissed by, like, he's not going to write that email. He's not even that self-aware. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that. And maybe we'll open with that, or what do you want to do? Open with that or the royal report? Cause that's kind of fun.
Should we, I know you want to talk about the royals.
Well, I feel like that's kind of related to let's leave that. Let's start with Fauci and then we'll get into the royal report and the American Greatness article about the woke culture, because I think those two are sort of related. Actually, I have a nice segue. I think they're all three related. So let's talk Fauci email first. So, everybody knows, or most people know, there was a big FOIA request, BuzzFeed, and I can't remember the other publication. Another left-leaning publication got some emails from Fauci, like early pandemic
Vanity
emails.
Fair, I think.
I don't think it's Vanity Fair, although they wrote a big piece about it that is one of the best regarded pieces out there, I think, pulling it all together and revealing what was in them. But because I think it's Washington Post, actually. And of course, their spin is like, oh, it shows what a nice guy he was, that he's so friendly. And oh, he's like so nice on his emails. And way to go, Fauci, for staying nice in the middle of all this crazy pandemic stuff and stuff like that. Which that's their whole take on what they saw there. But they have a completely different view of what a bureaucrat is for, what government is for. Like, our view is as little as possible. Freedom is really important. Like, that's the context we're coming from, is our political views are, I don't want a bureaucrat telling me what to do any more than he has to. And I think that bureaucrats should be efficient, and I think that they should be doing their job. And I think that they should, in general, have a benevolent, they should want to help people. It should be it's a service job. It's not a self, like, how can I get richer as a bureaucrat in government, which of course, I don't know how we stop that, because, when you have a wealthy country, you're going to have people, leeches everywhere. And the federal government is out of control. It's a deep state, and he's part of that. So that's like my context. I'm already coming at Fauci with skepticism. I'm already coming at Fauci with, look, I know that around you are all of these incentives to cheat me and steal and lie. And the fact that you're at the head of this organization tells me you're really good at it, right?
Yeah.
Like he's a good crook. He's a good white collar crook.
Yeah, to
He's
move
not
up
a good
those
person.
ranks, to move up the ranks in political organizations, you have to be political and you have to be very good at it.
To move up the ranks in big corporate America because of how political the country has become, how regulated and how much the federal government controls everything. I mean, I noticed this way back when I got out of school and went first into corporate America, that it was so political. And it, especially the bigger the company, the worse. Like the more the top executive team were a bunch of dorks, like just idiots who had nothing to say, never said anything worth anything, and shook your hand and smiled and were just worthless people. Literally worthless people. They were not smart. I'm sure there were exceptions to that, you know, but that was my observation. And so in DC, it's going to be even worse in a real bureaucracy. And I don't think anyone at the head of any of these organizations can possibly be a good person. I don't think that's even possible. Like you just wouldn't do that job.
Yeah. It's self-weeding.
Yeah.
Like to want to be in an organization like that, in that role, you necessarily have to be a bad person who's willing to go to almost any length politically to climb the ranks. And it's not good. It's not a meritocracy whatsoever. So we know he's a bad guy. And there's pictures of him for decades, going back, I think, to the 80s, at least the 90s. I've seen old photos of him with, with these globalists, posing for some photo op or something with, like Bill Gates is there, and some weird collection of global Illuminati type characters, from the last 20 or 30 years. Like, oh, Fauci's with the King of Denmark, and the, George Soros is there, and these kinds of people, they're all there. It's just like, whoa, where did this guy come from?
And he made a huge amount of money off of HIV. Huge. In the 80s. And there are a lot of people, and all of this was censored early last year. I mean, I managed to watch a couple documentaries. I'm already coming at it that this guy's corrupt, because I'm sure he's a butt-kissing, corrupt guy who's willing to grease palms and have his palms greased. And it's
plays
just a
ball.
He plays ball, and that's why he's in the position he's in. He's gross. Already I know that. And then I see a documentary about him stifling other people's AIDS research so that not his own, but the stuff that he was financially involved in rose to the top, and all of the money pouring into AIDS in the 80s. It was a boon time for any AIDS research. And he made a huge amount of money. And with his role in power, he was able to just destroy other people's careers who might be competitors with his private investments and interests in AIDS research. So he controlled all of the funding, and he controlled what was approved and things like that. And he was part of that little scheme. And then he also had a financial interest. So that goes way, way back. So that's who this guy is. So that's my context. And then I also know from my own eyeballs, because he admitted it on TV, he said, don't wear masks. You don't need to wear masks. And then he said, yeah, you have to wear masks. And I only said that I was lying to you because I didn't want you to make a run on masks, and then our nurses and doctors and stuff wouldn't have masks. So I lied to you like children. And by the way, I wouldn't even do that to my child. Like, I made a commitment to myself that I would not lie to my daughter. However expedient that was for me. I'm not going to say, oh, the ice cream store is closed, instead of saying, no, you can't have ice cream. I'm not going to lie to her. I could easily lie to her and fool her, and I refuse to do it. I think it's icky. And
that's smart.
Also I want her to be able to learn how to act within reality and within the fact that her parent actually can say no, like she's got to deal with that. So Fauci lied to America and Americans because he didn't think we could handle the truth. He wanted to control the outcome. And then, so that happened, and he even admitted that. And then he lied to us about how the percentage of vaccination would be needed to achieve herd immunity, and admitted he lied about it. At first he said 60%, and then he said, oh no, it can go as high as 80. And I was just saying that so that people would go get vaccinated. So he has admitted to 2 instances, and he's just like, why? What's the problem? Yeah, I lied because, you know, you guys can't be trusted to think for yourselves and make good decisions. You know, it was a medical emergency that I lied to you and treat you like a child and like as a bad parent to a child. So that happened last year. So if you got through last year and think this guy's a good guy, you're not paying attention. Already, I feel like I don't need these emails to know the guy is a crook. The whole thing around remdesivir and his financial interest in that and how that was being pushed, the squashing of the other treatments, which I can't mention, or this video will get possibly taken down and we won't get into it. But any other treatments completely, and he's not the only one. I mean, everyone's like, well, it's not just him. No, of course it's not just him. But he is guilty of this. He's part of the coronavirus response team, the head, and he is arguably the one that everyone was listening to the most. So, you know, he stuck his neck out, and I hope he gets it chopped off because, you know, and he won't, because that's the world we live in. It'll be a lowest learner moment. It probably won't even be that bad. It will probably be Fauci's decided to retire, and he won't do it right away so that it's not too closely linked to these emails. He'll just say, oh, it's been a stressful year. I'm going to go do other things. But his emails just show more of the same. So they show, like, there was an email where he was saying and explaining very logically and rationally, he obviously knows the truth, why masks don't work for this particular virus. And he's talking about like surgical masks. I mean, you can wear an N95. I think that should have been made clear to people. You know, if you really need to protect yourself, you need an N95. Or, you know, you need to protect yourself from aerosol level virus. So it's not good enough to just wear this paper thing. And you know, how many lives of vulnerable people, maybe, like, I remember, you know, I was vulnerable all last year. I was on medication that made me vulnerable. And I would go into an elevator wearing my N95 mask, you know, at the doctor's office or something. And I didn't go anywhere inside without my N95 during the height of the whole thing. And there's like some old person, very vulnerable person in there with me with a paper mask on. And I'm like, dude, it's not even, that person thinks they're protected.
Yeah.
So all that lying, and the email just shows that he actually knew the truth about the size of the drop, you know, the size of the virus and droplets, and, like, you know, he knew. But you think he didn't know? I mean, I didn't need the email to know that he knew. So I don't know what people, like, they're waiting for some kind of, I mean, to me, we had lots of proof last year about what kind of guy he was. What are people waiting for, Doug? And why can't they see, or why can't they conclude in their own head, yeah, this guy's a bad guy?
Well, I don't think it's for people on our side to conclude that. I think it's a way to, as a cudgel against the censors and the media who lionize Fauci and accuse us of being conspiracy theorists or being, alt-right whack jobs or something, to have in black and white some corroboration that he is a liar is helpful politically and tactically, to push back against a couple of things, not only just Fauci as a person, but against a system and against a methodology whereby, as a country or as a people, you rely on one expert as some sort of authority figure, as if science is revealed knowledge from up on high that comes down through the great God Fauci and out to the unwashed masses. This is not how science works. It's not how medicine should ever work. We should not rely on like one person's opinion or an authority figure.
Also, just judging somebody as bad. Why do we need a video of them? Like we need like the movie version of the monologue of the villain at the end saying, "Ha ha, I got you now. I did this, and connects all the dots."
I think it's
people
because
can't do it themselves.
Yeah, because I think people are politically biased. I'll use a sports analogy. Like if two, this maybe kind of a dumb analogy, but I think it's somewhat apt. But if you had like a fan of Team A and Team B watching the same game, and the referee makes a call like a foul on one team, even though it's kind of obvious what happened, the person negatively impacted by it, the fan will say, "No, that wasn't a foul. Yeah, it was a foul." And you kind of almost joke about it, but in a way you kind of like, "No, I don't think that was a foul. I think we got ripped off. No, that was." So they'll actually argue about it, and it's like, "Well, look at the tape, look at the videotape." And then it's like in slow motion you can see it happen, and the person still might not admit that they're wrong, even though it's like in slow motion. But it's at least for most people, it's like, all right, come on, like most people are reasonable at that point when you have that level of evidence.
I guess I'm talking about people on the right. Like they know they don't like Fauci. They know that, I mean, the other thing about Fauci is that he advocated for and was at least partly responsible for the lockdowns, the destruction of our economy. He decided that was a good trade-off for what was going on. Meanwhile, he knew how deadly this virus was along with the rest of us. I mean, we could see that it was less deadly. He probably knew more than we knew. He probably knew more about the PCR and things like that. And how the test was over what?
I have a sort of a different view on it, which is that because I know a lot of doctors and I know a lot of really smart people like PhDs in medicine and biology and chemistry and people that kind of know this stuff pretty well. And they all argued all the time about this. I don't think anyone knew.
About lockdowns, you mean? Or about how deadly it was?
Well, yeah. Well, it's a similar question because, like, let's say this virus had like a 50% fatality rate. It was like, yeah, we need to go hide in bunkers, because of this. But so the question of like how fatal it was and how it was transmitted directly related to the need for separating people and social distancing and those kinds of scientific questions. And so, I know doctors or friends of doctors who were on the front lines of this, who were like in ERs, like managing the COVID response and stuff. So, and they didn't even know, and their answers weren't always sufficient to me. So what I'm saying is like, there was no omniscient knower of all truth who was just holding it back from the public for nefarious purposes. Although, of course, the politicians then use this as a way to, never let a crisis go to waste. But I think there were a lot of medical people who just don't know, and we didn't know.
I think there are certain things we knew by summer. We knew that it was deadly to older people and to overweight people. Yeah. We knew that vitamin D was a good preventative of serious COVID. Not just getting COVID, but against developing severe. No, we did. I was looking at charts that were showing that people who were getting severe COVID had low vitamin D compared to people who did not. So the whole PCR test being too sensitive or asymptomatic transmission, these are things like I'm not really sure when that was really well known that the PCR tests were probably too sensitive. I don't know if Fauci knew that. I mean, a lot of people on the right were saying last summer that people were dying in a car accident, and if they had COVID, it was marked COVID.
Yep.
I heard a lot of people saying that. I heard doctors saying they were being incentivized to label a death as financially.
They were making money.
They're
would get
making
like
money
a
off of
payment
COVID
from the
deaths.
government. Yeah.
And doctors were saying these incentives are skewing the numbers. They're wrong. It shouldn't be like this. So I was hearing like reports like that, but nothing was ever nothing ever
What I'm
came
saying is
down
that
officially about that.
this is a really, really messy scientific problem. And this is like why you need a free and open marketplace of ideas where people are constantly challenging authority and
Right.
constantly asking questions and constantly doing new studies and new tests and new experiments and saying, people calling bullshit on this stuff all the time, every day, like even to the greatest expert in the world. These experts get together and all disagree. They don't agree on this stuff. And that's how science works.
One of the emails that struck me wasn't even about Fauci. To me, it was to Fauci from Mark Zuckerberg. And this one struck me as one of the most damning emails in the whole lot. And it was damning against Mark Zuckerberg. He wrote this just really suck ass email, like, I know you're busy and like I couldn't believe how deferential it was to Fauci, because Zuckerberg's like a billionaire with a lot of power. And he was so ass kissy in this email. And he said, Facebook wants to help push the authoritative.
Yep.
That's the word he used, authoritative information. And Facebook spent the entire last year pushing the WHO and Fauci and and the CDC and censoring, banning, blocking, shadow banning, being open about it. No, you can't say this was a lab leak. No, you can't do it. We're going to remove this. We're going to remove that, along with YouTube, Twitter, Google, like they all did that. And so when they pushed authoritative information, they don't say, we really want to get the truth out. That's not what the email said. The email said, we want to get the authoritative information out. That's the word he used. He didn't use the word true. And I don't think he meant true. No. I think he meant, what do you want us to say? What do you want us to do?
Yeah.
Because
I'm sorry.
No, that's it. I mean, I think you're right. I think if all that social media censorship hadn't been happening, things would not have been so difficult last year. I think it would have saved a lot of lives. And someone like Fauci wouldn't have so much power, because people would just be questioning everything all the time.
Question everything all the time, just like you do when you go to your doctors, But the point that I'm making is somewhat deeper in that, as people who believe in reason and rationality, we know the process is to always question, always be asking questions, always be doing new tests and update your knowledge and learn more and more and more. And notice, like, his approach is what's authoritative and what's not, as if the way science works. And again, this is how it does, quote unquote, work for a leftist. The way it works for a leftist is, I have a political goal in mind. And so, and two, people are stupid and we need to control them. So I need the authoritative truth, like, this is how science works. There's a true conclusion, just like in climate change or whatever I want to be true. I need the scientific basis of that. And then I'm going to use that as a weapon to crush my opponent, rather than, because they don't really believe in reason. They reject that as a method of thinking. Science is just a tool to exercise your power, to justify your power.
Yeah. It's right out of an Ayn Rand novel, just the epistemology of the second-hander. Literally doesn't think there is truth. It's how we move society with information. And
how do we control people
Yeah.
by using your authoritative position as the CDC director or whatever to manipulate and control the masses and to quash and shut down and suppress dissent.
Yeah. And so Zuckerberg's saying, how can we help you do that?
And they did it. And they did it. And instead of like, hey, let's just have an open marketplace. And yeah, of course there are experts in science. We should listen to all these people as normals, civilians that are watching this argument take place in front of us. But it's like, just like you, Sonny, like you go to the doctor, do any of us say, I guess a lot of us probably unfortunately do, but the doctor says, take this drug. Okay. Does anyone go to WebMD and look up what are the side effects? Like, what is the drug? Like, what? No, I'll take it. Fine. I mean, for something like a cold or like an antibiotic, yeah, okay, fine. I'll trust the doctor. But like, if you had a serious problem,
don't do that.
No, don't do that. You get a second
literally,
opinion?
If you have a problem above one of these things like strep throat that's just testable and here's the cure.
Yeah.
If you have a problem that's not like that, even if you have a diagnosis, but you have one of these diagnoses that's sort of like, nobody really knows what to do and here's a treatment, but it's not curable or whatever, like my autoimmune condition, that will kill you if you just
I'm not
do
trying to just flatter you, Sonny, but if anyone can speak to this, it's you, because you've opened my eyes. Like Sonny's been through a serious illness for many years. And the number of stories you've told me just offline about, I went to the hospital and the doctor and they didn't listen to me and they said it was this, but it was that. And I had to push back and I had to fight and I had to get this person, a relative and a spouse to come in and like fight for me. And I mean, you've like had to fight the system to like save yourself. And I think there was probably cases where you would have been in serious trouble.
I think I would be dead today if I'm not, that's not even a joke. I would be dead today if I hadn't fought. There are a few moments where
a totally first-handed, independent mind.
Yes.
Saying,
and feeling awful about it. Like, you feel.
They make you feel like shit.
They make you feel like you're crazy and that you're, it's just like what they do to you in politics. Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. You're, whenever you stick your neck out above the crowd and go, I don't believe what you're saying. I believe this over here. I don't believe this. Or, well, if you're just questioning this.
Explain it to me. Explain to me why I should take this drug.
Test that shows whether or not, like, isn't there a way to do this? Or how do you know that's right? And can we be more sure about that before I spend 2 months of my life?
Yeah, and if you don't know, just say, you know what? I don't know. Here's what I know. We did a study and 40% of the people did better. Yeah. And, it was statistically significant above a placebo. So it may not work, but it might work. But here are the side effects that we know about. And that's it. Like, and now, Sonny, you make the decision. No, how many people should come to you and say, this is what you should do. And if you don't do it, you're an alt-right nut job and we're going to crush you and stop you from speaking and dissenting. I mean, this is what you've experienced is a microcosm of the entire society.
That's exactly right. And it's this, Ayn Rand talked about this culture of unreason, and that is it. I mean, it's just, how dare you question? How dare you ask me to do another test? How dare you think for yourself? How dare you disagree with me? I'm the expert. Like, it's this really, like, there's shock. And this is in medicine. It's not politics. There's like this sort of, oh my God, what? And I remember experiencing that too in politics, like at work, when some, leftists would be talking about environmentalism or something. And I would say, I don't really agree with that. And like the 20 years ago, it was sort of like, what, like now they hate your guts now, but before they would just be like, I've never heard that. I've never heard disagreement. Yeah. They thought everybody just agreed because that's what they said in college. And,
yeah,
I've been surrounded by environmentalism for 20 years. Why? I didn't think anybody was left who thought that recycling was bullshit,
And this is the danger of even having like a CDC and a health bureaucracy, of course.
Yeah.
As we know, all of us probably listening to this podcast would agree. But, the fact that there is a CDC and there's this like expert organization that's held up to the public as authoritative, like that's really dangerous.
100%. It's what causes this lack of thinking for yourself, because you just go, oh, the FDA approves my drugs for me.
I don't have to research
if they said it was safe, it's safe for me.
It's like the FDIC insuring your bank account.
Because not only does the FDA approve things that are dangerous, but they also, and individuals are all different, but they also don't approve things that could save your life. And they're a political organization that has a lot of corruption. There's a revolving door between them and the pharmaceutical companies, the people who work there. So, but most people go, oh yeah, the FDA, thank God for the FDA. What would we do without the FDA? And the FDA is causing you to not look at the drug, think for yourself, look at the trials, look at the studies. And maybe you don't want to do, I don't want to do that with my freaking life. But the environment that has been created, there is no consumer place to go that isn't linked to these bad incentives. There's nobody out there analyzing this stuff. And
like you need a consumer reports for medicine.
You need a consumer reports. You don't
I would
need
trust
an FDA.
A private organization who only exists because their reputation is that they're objective and they do testing on this stuff, rather than trust an FDA, which has the government imprimatur as well as government force to keep drugs off the market, and then who naturally people are going to use corruptly to push their drugs, push their methodology. Hey, this is how we should be testing. And no, that's not true. Like, we need a whole marketplace of different people saying, no, this is the right way to test a drug. It's not,
you spend more time on almost anything else you buy. You spend more thinking, more independent thought than on medicine. And or the really highly regulated industries, it's the same. And with politics being, the ultimate regulated industry, because they're the regulators. So anyway, I'm already looking at Fauci like that. And then the other things I'll just lastly just bring up about the emails is that another lie that he was caught in was on MSNBC. He said that he was blocked from speaking out and giving his opinion. And that was a really big deal. Like, that made big headlines that Trump had been blocking Fauci. But in emails repeatedly over and over and over and over and over and over, he was asserting to people asking him, are you being censored? Are you allowed to speak freely? That no, there's been no pushback. He's saying exactly what he thinks. He said that over and over and over in emails. But then, to like make the MSNBC Rachel Maddow feel good, he was saying, oh yeah, now I can finally speak. Now I'm not, I was blocked. What a dick.
The other thing that struck me about it was the admissions that he covered up and sort of whitewashed the funding of the gain of function research and the Wuhan lab stuff.
What he did, especially with Rand Paul in that hearing, was do like a Bill Clinton. He did a Bill Clinton. It depends on what the meaning of is. Is it gain of function or isn't it gain of function? He said, it's not gain of function. And then there's this other idea that just because the US was funding another organization that then funded, that somehow we're not responsible. Yeah. But we are, because we knew what they were doing. And of course he knew what they were doing. And his emails proved that he knew that they were doing gain of function. But he's really savvy. He has a bunch of meetings. Oh, we're going to have a meeting. We have to have a meeting. Like, everything's done in person. He's not the really big moments.
I have to talk to you in person immediately.
Yes. Over and over that comes up where he's like, review this gain of function information. Tomorrow you're going to have tasks to do. We need to meet right away. And you don't know what was said. He had a meeting with Bill Gates and you don't know what was said. So, I mean,
and this is
and
supposedly
of course, there's not going to be a smoking gun.
And yet this is a government employee. So his work product should all be, able to be scrutinized and should be recorded, just like, like Hillary's emails and stuff like that. They're supposed to be, you don't have offline meetings about government business or about things that the taxpayers are paying for. If you have something to say, you say it in open or in public, or you write a memo or something like that. So no, we're going to meet secretly, which is what we saw this in some election email correspondence between some corrupt players. Things I've looked at where this is how they would operate. Like, hey, can I come to your office and talk to you in one-on-one? Because they were it was like, we really want to be able to cure the ballots. And it's like someone's pushing back about curing. Can I come over and we'll talk about this? And that's how they do it. That's how they get around it.
Of course. And when us patriots go underground, that's how we're going to have to do it. I'm already censoring what I say online. I don't say a lot of stuff through messaging or anything with friends if I feel like it's something that could be used against me at a time when the left is more authoritarian than it is now. I don't say that stuff. I don't say that stuff out in the open. So already I'm doing that. I'm doing Fauci stuff. But I'm not in the habit of it. It bugs me that I have to be so careful about what I say. Anyway, so that's who we're dealing with. That's who he is. The guy, when he goes, the guy who takes his place is going to be just as bad. I don't care if he keeps his job. I just want people to stop worshiping him. I want to see that he is relegated to where he should be, which is just a voice in the many and not somebody that is setting policy for every American, because he's bad at it.
Right.
He makes bad
but all
choices.
bureaucracy, what I'm saying too is all bureaucracies are bad at it. There's no such thing as a one size fits all choice for 300 million people.
Well, and it's because of the kind of people that filter up there too. You're not going to have a libertarian type at the top of the NIH or the whatever the hell his organization is. It's not going to be somebody who thinks that human beings can make their own choices and should make their own choices and should be trusted. And
therefore,
that's not
I want to
the
be the
kind
head
of
of the CDC. Yeah.
Yeah, right. That is not exactly what it's. Okay. So let's go into the Royal Report.
Now it's time for the House of Sunny's Royal Watch.
Oh shit.
What?
What? I just always wince and get nervous when we talk about the Royals because I have like a visceral reaction to it. Yeah, Meghan.
Why? Let's explore that. Like, I mean, I follow this stuff.
I hate them.
I hate them too. But like, why do you experience that feeling? It's just gossip, Doug, right? I mean, everyone's like, oh, why do you report on these people? It's just gossipy tabloid stuff.
No, I think you're right. You'd made me see because I had the same view, this is stupid. And then when you have this visceral reaction, you realize she's this emblem of woke culture. And she single-handedly shitting on this tradition, not on Western tradition and Western civilization. And so to have someone in her position so high up, so to speak, such a popular, or not popular, but such a public, she's the wife of the prince or whatever, to have someone who'd gotten this far, she's so disgusting. And for her to have that platform and that level of influence where when she talks, millions and millions of people listen to what this woman is saying.
That's right.
It's so sickening. She could be the opposite of that and be a great voice for all that is good and for virtue, like rational virtues and people who valued rights and liberty and Western civilization and everything that we fight for. And yet she's the opposite. And it's such a contradiction. I think that's what gives me a visceral reaction is she's using all the benefits and virtues of Western civilization, like this, this perch is a royal, that rests on all the wealth and this empire that was created over thousands of years, some bad, some mostly good, progress. And then to take that and then use that to shit on it and destroy it. It's one thing if she was just on the sidelines, just pelting the British, I'd say fine, but she's.
Yeah. So. Plenty of people don't like the monarchy and they attack it.
Sure.
People I admire, one of the guy who, there's a British guy. I'm sorry, I can't think of is it Spiked? The British publication. Brandon is his first name. He's the editor of a big British magazine that he's an anti-monarchist, but he hates Meghan Markle because what you're saying is true. It's it's one thing to criticize and be against the monarchy, but she's using the monarchy.
Yes.
And then trying to take it down. It's this really gross, but hypocrisy. She is anti-Western civilization as well. She's a power mongering, very, very, the thing about them is they are influential by virtue of their position. So whether you like it or not, The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have power. Period. And I think it helps to sort of step away. What if you're reading in a history book 400 or 500 years ago, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex start criticizing, I mean, like, think about them in terms of their position and their power position, not Harry and Meghan. Because I think we can sort of forget, like, these personalities that we're seeing in the tabloids, but think about who they are. And if you saw this a few hundred years ago, this would be history in the making. Like, you have, and we didn't go over this because we weren't doing podcasts at the time, but Harry said, screw the First Amendment is bonkers. And he loves to go out and talk about how misinformation is like the scourge of our time, which just means I'm anti-free speech.
Right.
And a lot of this is coming from her, and she's a racist, a race baiter. She's a full-on critical race theory race hustler who capitalizes on the fact that she's like, I don't even think she's darker the skin than me, but she's supposedly black.
Yeah.
Like, she's barely black, but she's going to take that and run with it, for power and position.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons Harry married her is because she's black. Like, I think that makes him feel good about himself, that he's, I don't see skin color, I'm not racist. I'm gonna prove it. I'm gonna marry this very, very white black girl. Give me the whitest black girl I can find. I'm gonna marry that one.
Right.
But the point is if you step back from who they are, Harry and Meghan, and regard them in their place in history, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have fled England, come to America, and they criticize the monarchy as being racist. And the U.S. is, of course, systemically racist. Of course, we know that. But so is the monarchy and the palace. And they're thoughtless, and they didn't care that she was going to kill herself. And
she's probably right about
that. Yes, please, Meghan.
They
probably got off the phone and we're just like, oh, hey, guess what?
Good news.
We might be rid of her sooner rather than later. I heard Lady Colin Campbell said that the reason that they allowed the marriage was that Harry and Meghan threatened to play the race card if they didn't allow the marriage. Because nobody really everybody thought her past was shady. They didn't really like her. They had some things that they were concerned about. They didn't think she was, the divorces. They didn't think that she was good for Harry and good for the monarchy. They didn't think that she'd be able to handle it. And they were putting up kind of a fight about it. They were starting to be like, no, Harry, this is dumb. And they're just like, well, if you don't let us do this, and I'm sure this is coming from Meghan because she's a brilliant strategizer. If you don't let us get married, we're going to say that it was because I'm black.
Mm-hmm. Of course. And then they allowed it to happen. And this
is why you should never give in. You should say, okay, fine. Call me a racist. I'm going to do what I think is right anyway.
Yeah.
Because look at how she has now gotten her tendrils.
It's a camel under the tent.
She's got 2 kids that are royals by blood. She's the mother. So I think she's like, if you think about how the hell did a German girl marry a Russian prince and become Catherine the Great after conducting a coup and killing her husband and taking over Russia? Do you ever think about that? What sort of person was Catherine the Great?
Yeah. These are all bad people.
Meghan Markle. She's wily, she's smart, she's conniving, she's weasels her way in and finds a way to eliminate her competition.
Yeah, she's a Shakespearean character.
She's really bad. Yeah. So this is a person on the scene. She's not a tabloid subject. She is a political, influential, global scale operator. a very, very clever manipulator and operator. So that's who she is. And so it does matter. And so anyway, besides the free speech thing, I mean, there's really not much going on with them except that they just had their baby, which they named. This is so crass and so tacky. They named their baby after the Queen's nickname, Lilibet.
Lilibet.
Oh, so
cringe.
That is so cringe, but I get it because now their baby will forever with its own name be associated with the Queen.
Well, they're threatening to sue British press for defamation for suggesting that. Did you hear that? They've sent letters to British media warning that the allegation that that's defamatory and should not be.
What allegation?
That they married, that they used that name. They used the Queen's nickname. That was the Queen's childhood nickname.
But it is her nickname. I don't understand. I don't know what you're saying. Let me look. I'm going to have to look this up because I didn't see that this morning.
The standoff relates to what the couple told the Queen about their intention to call their daughter. The first name is Elizabeth's lifelong family nickname dating back to childhood. They said they shared their hope of using Lilibet prior to the article's false. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, the story quoted a palace source saying the couple never asked the Queen's permission.
Oh, okay. So it's just whether or not they asked her permission.
Yeah.
Well, they would have to get the Queen to make a state. Like they would have to literally have the Queen subpoenaed to assert whether or not they had that conversation.
This is the shit that they're doing. They're just awful fucking people.
Just horrible, horrible people. Why not just let it go? Like, who gives a crap what the tabloids say about you? But no, they want to control the media. She does, in particular, very sensitive about any bad press. So they named their child Lilibet. Lilibet is the Queen's childhood nickname. Very few people apparently used that nickname. Particularly her husband did, the one who just died. And, I just kind of think of it as it's a merch thing. Like you can just see Lilibet Target clothing and Lilibet, because it's royal. It's associated with the Queen no matter what. This child is now directly associated with the Queen in a way even that Charlotte, who's closer to the throne, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge's kid, their daughter is Charlotte Elizabeth Diana. This girl of theirs, Harry and Meghan's child with Lilibet as her name, is going to be more associated with the Queen than any other child, even the ones who are going to be on the throne.
So once again, she's shitting on the monarchy. They've dissociated from the monarchy, but they're capitalizing on it.
Yes.
Ugh.
And forever connecting their daughter with the Queen, who is the most revered and the most loved of all the royals. And she's going to be dead soon. And all that's going to be left is going to be Harry and Meghan's child. It's kind of like that. And even when William's son takes the throne, his name isn't even as connected to her. Like it's a really smart thing to do, to name their kid Lilibet, not Elizabeth. Much more personal, more personally associated with the Queen. Lilibet, her nickname.
It's diabolical.
It's so diabolical. And the middle name is Diana, after the other, much loved royal.
Well, they say here they call their daughter Lilibet Mountbatten-Windsor.
Well, that is the family name, Mountbatten.
Mountbatten? Okay.
Yeah, that's the family name.
I never heard the Mountbatten. I'm gonna start calling myself Mountbatten. I love that.
Well, it's because Prince Philip is a Mountbatten. Dead Prince Philip,
Mountbatten is so good.
So it's Charles Mountbatten-Windsor. It's William Mountbatten. It's Harry Mountbatten-Windsor. That's their last name.
I once wanted to call myself Monty Furthermore.
What happened to your Chinese woman thing?
That was before the Chinese woman. I wanted to be
Monty Furthermore.
Yes.
That would be a great Twitter name.
Monty Furthermore.
So everybody really should care about this and watch them because they're powerful people, and we're just going to keep our eye on them. So more culture stuff, because this is where I think we do good, and our side needs more information on this. You know, I pay a lot of attention to culture. I think you do too. Probably not as much as me, but
not as much as you.
So this was really interesting to me because I've never been on Tumblr. I kind of was on there a little bit in the early 10s, but it wasn't that interesting to me. I didn't stick around, you know? So what this article, I'm going to just share it really quick so you can sort of see, and I'll put the link in the notes here. This is an article from, hang on, share sound. I hope that I'm doing this right. Yeah. All right. So here we have the Daily Mail. I didn't see anything on here about them suing. Harry wages war with BBC. Furious Prince threatens legal action over claim he did not consult the Queen. Oh, poor Harry. Poor Harry. Oh,
this is the stuff that these people worry about. It's unbelievable.
I hate these people.
God.
Okay, where's the... Somehow...
Are you on Am Greatness?
I'm trying to find it. I had it open here. Here we go.
Yeah,
all right. So this is From What Lab Did Cancel Culture Leak by Bill Hurl. And his speciality, I was looking at his bio at the bottom here. It's like he's basically a Silicon Valley person. So his argument in a nutshell is that all of this cancel culture, and we know that critical race theory and all of that real highfalutin stuff, postmodernism, comes from the universities. But mechanically, how does it make its way from the universities out into the culture? How did we end up with this ridiculous, like oversensitive, safe spaces, cancel, like even the universities, I think were sort of taken aback when people started coming to the university and going, we demand, we can't be triggered. We want, you know, we need a safe space. We need cookies and ice cream, you know, like take care of us, coddle us. And the universities ideologically were on board with that, and they gave into it. And so it's almost like it went into the universities, latched onto critical race theory, and then came out. But it came from somewhere before that even. And the ideology is a really important part of why something infests a culture, because you now have all of these people completely disarmed and have completely accepted a lot of this philosophic base without really realizing it. And then along comes this cancel culture, and they're defenseless, and they go, well, yeah, that seems right.
It's a way to marry your psychosis with moral idealism.
Yeah, so they're given these moral ideals, then they go out in the world. And so then when these people come out that have this psychosis, they give into it because they've sort of been taught that oppressed, oppressor, unreason, emotional, like they've already got the ideological framework to just accept this crazy stuff. They don't have any
I'm hurting and depressed. I'm hurting, depressed. I have psychological problems. I've got all sorts of cognitive distortions in my mind. And rather than someone saying, you got to jettison all that and be strong and resilient and learn how to think. No, the colleges give into it and then marry their cognitive behavioral distortions with a moral idealism of critical. No, you're a victim. And, you know, you should give in to your anxiety and depression and sense of alienation.
Not just that, but the average person who went through college and was educated with this postmodernist critical race theory stuff, they're disarmed completely and they're apt to accept it. So, I mean, even people who don't have psychological problems and they're out in the world and they're working, went through college though. And so ideologically, they're sort of programmed. Then out come these disturbed people and they just fold like a cheap suit, you know, like they don't, oh, okay. Yeah. I guess if you're saying you're your lived experience is this, then, like they have no defense. They just accept it all because they were already sort of indoctrinated with the ideology. So the question is, who are these crazy kooks who have latched onto critical race theory and brought it out into the culture? So this is the mechanics of how a philosophy makes it out into our daily lives, and why every company and every entertainment industry, all the entertainment industry and all the media, like why is this happening? Why are the worst people on Twitter running our lives? So this guy attempts to answer that, and he is convinced that this is true. He thinks you can trace it back to Tumblr and this weird, creepy, mentally ill girl fan culture on Tumblr. That seems like far-fetched, right? But this is a really, really long piece, and he spends most of it describing this culture and a lot of the verbiage that we're living with on a day-to-day basis, like this is problematic. You're problematic. I can't even, I have the feels, this sort of over emotional catastrophizing and blowing things, very dramatic. Everything's it's either very, very negative or, oh my God, that's so great, I can't stand it. Everything's just overwrought. Bigger and bigger and bigger and overwrought. Yes. So from good to bad, being just very emotional about everything, then being very sensitive, easily offended,
fragile.
Fragile mentally, where the slightest thing just sends you off the deep end, and people being problematic, people needing to be canceled, all of this comes from this weird infighting that was going on, literally like a junior high, with the sickest girls kind of running the show, which is like junior high. Basically, junior high online was Tumblr, and it wasn't just girls. It was artsy girls or girls with sexual problems, because this particular fan culture was about like Harry Potter smut, and it was fan fiction with a lot of alternative sexuality. I shouldn't say smut, but some of it was smut. Some of it was just, gay or but like sexualizing Harry Potter, for example, is Harry Potter fan group is one of the big examples that he uses to show this kind of culture, which was, and it wasn't just Harry Potter, it was multiple artsy. Think about the mentality, first of all, the type of person who becomes so latched on to somebody else's art. The fangirl. I don't want to say, like, it's kind of like Star Trek for dorky guys, except it's girls. And we make fun of, let me stop the share here. We make fun of the nerds that go to the Star Trek conventions and stuff. And I think it's kind of probably fun to dress up or whatever, but at some point it's a little childish and people need to grow up. And, it seems kind of silly to dress up and go to a sci-fi, even going to like the Renaissance Festival and dressing up, like at a certain point,
because you're tying your identity and your person, your sort of your like self-worth to your fidelity to this fictional thing. It's at some point it becomes fanatical and unhealthy.
Yeah, unhealthy in that you're living in kind of a fantasy world and you're not living in your world. I think it can go too far is the thing. Now, some of these people had some talent and were actually writing fan fiction that became popular. And so they actually had some writing ability and they were just using that as a framework. Maybe they weren't talented enough to come up with their own characters in their own world, but they used what was already there to sort of create their own stories. And they could do so in a way that was of appeal to people who were into having more of that world explored. I think that's kind of legitimate. It's a legitimate way to do art, to borrow from other people. And, if you're not a J.K. Rowling, you don't have to be contributing value in art. So, but then you have people that are sort of hangers on to those people, and people, this is their life.
Yeah.
And they're obsessed with this, and they have blogs, and they're just like, this, all they do is the socializing within this fan club of Harry Potter, not even Harry Potter, but Harry Potter fan fiction. So it's not even like, oh, we're into J.K. Rowling. We're into this person, Claire, who wrote some fan fiction. And there's this one girl who went to these huge extremes to become popular within this group by like creating fake accounts. And then some of them, she was pretending they were right wingers that were criticizing her and calling her stuff like sexual smut and everything. It was just like, she created all of this drama in order to get allies, in order to get in with this club of kind of higher level, very woke, very leftist fanfic writers. And multiply that by many, many communities with many, many kinds of art, not just Harry Potter, but Tumblr was a place for artists and writers, painters, writers. Tumblr uniquely appealed to artists and also to fan clubs. So merging those two things. And you had a lot of young girls with mental illness that were in this community because they're artists, they're sexually confused. And this guy shows in this article, those are two kind of risk areas. If you're a young woman and on the scale of mentally ill and whether or not you're likely to have a mental illness, having a sexual problem, something outside the norm of normal sexuality, if you're gay or if you think you're trans or whatever, it's like a 50% higher chance of being depressed, or there's like basically on those kinds of stats, this like hit a bunch of those boxes where the sickest people in girl groups were in these Tumblr communities. And what happened was, how it got out from there, how it escaped the lab of Tumblr, is that corporate America, the people in there were being successful with their art, and media and entertainment industries were trying to fill quotas of women and minority women in particular, and found that they could find a lot of them in this Tumblr area that had minor success, big followings,
Yeah.
And then they hired them out of Tumblr. Like they said, this person has this many followers on Tumblr and they're creating this kind of art. I'm going to hire them to work for my magazine. Or I'm going to hire them to work at Marvel Comics in marketing or in drawing there. Or
they have a track record of it getting clicks and figuring out how to attract a following online, which is like all about clicks.
Some artistic talent.
Yeah, sure.
But they brought this weird, sick culture that had been just bubbling in Tumblr, which I don't think would have been possible without like an online kind of semi-anonymous community. Real dysfunction. And all of these words that came out of there, all these phrases of you're problematic, that hit me right in the feels, all of these things that we say that we think we don't really know where they came from, they all came from Tumblr.
And so this spreads out through the culture because they're hiring these kids.
Yeah. They hired all these kids.
Prominent cultural checkpoints like comic books.
In order to diversify their, and they just thought of it as, hey, this is a
social media strategy.
Yeah, this is a place where we can find creatives who are already popular. They already have a fan base, They're obviously doing work. They must be good, They didn't realize they were hiring mentally ill, toxic people to then infiltrate the entire cultural product place, which is entertainment, media, comic books, movies, media, all the stuff where we're like, how did this spread so fast? He claims, and I don't know how true this is. I would want to see more people go, yeah, we hired some people out of Tumblr and they were a wreck and they caused all of this toxic, you know how toxic workplace can, you get one bad apple, man. And especially with this woke stuff, you get one minority that starts claiming discrimination. And I mean, you see this in Silicon Valley too. People band together and say that person's problematic. They need to go because they said something on social media 10 years ago. And that's how they get people fired. And you get one rabble rouser in there and
well, it's
good
the very
people,
definition of viral.
Yeah.
It's a nonlinear exponential effect that these platforms have. And we've seen through studies that depression and suicide and self-harm rates were going up since about 2012, 2014, when the smartphone began to proliferate and when like more than 50% of people had smartphones. And then, the like buttons come in and all those features that we all know about now in social media all came in, and you can literally see the spikes in teenage suicide, depression, and anxiety levels. And so this did happen. Like, this guy's now putting his finger on the location, the precise location of it, but we know that this did happen. And then these kids were coming into college, and the administrators, rather than reacting like adults to children who have mental illnesses and saying, you need help, here's how we're going to help you, they gave into it and kowtowed to it and made that their policy. Like, let's facilitate mental illness and kowtow to it. And, these people all have fears and they're depressed and anxious. The other interesting thing is the female aspect of it. And what I understand from like Twangy and Haidt is that females express their belligerence relationally, whereas men express belligerence obviously physically. So women go after popularity and like ruining the reputation of their friends and things like that, the classic teenage girl stuff. And what better platform is there than Tumblr / Twitter / any of these social media platforms for being, what better weapon is there in the hands of someone who's relationally belligerent? And I've seen this firsthand with some of my kids, but what girls and what any group, but particularly teenage girls, because the rates of teenage girl suicide was even higher than for boys. So this has been devastating. This whole process you're describing has been absolutely devastating, not only for teenagers, but to the whole culture. What happened?
Yeah. As a person with a daughter, I'm a little freaked out about.
Don't let them on social media.
Well, that for sure, but
it's hard. You're going to find it very,
she's
very
now
hard.
got. I can't put her in a box. She's going to interact with other girls and other boys, and I see boys acting like this. It's not just girls anymore. Like, boys are, looking for mental disorders to explain their own humanity. Like, they think they're toxic. They think they're toxic because they're men. They've bought into a lot of this stuff. And we're seeing this kind of beta male kind of behavior. This women are so powerful, men take a back seat. Every man has to be like a feminist, which means that which today doesn't mean equal. It means women are better, men are toxic, and masculinity is bad. They've bought into that. They're mentally ill. And if they're not, they're trying to be, because it gives them intersectional points. And if you're a white male, it's either you got to be a trans or mentally ill, like with a diagnosed mental illness, in order to have some kind of victim points.
Well, think about this process. Like, say you're online and you're trying to stand out in a sea of thousands of voices on a Twitter feed or on Tumblr or wherever, Instagram. And the currency with which you can gain credibility. Because a tweet like, okay, I'm a white guy and I have a tweet and I make a good point. Oh, who cares? But if I'm and like fill in the blank, I'm a transgender, black, Asian, blah, blah, blah. Like in that world, okay, now people will listen to you because you have that credibility and you have that victimhood and you have that intersectionality currency. So that gains you currency and people will listen to you and then you will stand out because now you can speak to this.
It's not just about that. It's like you yourself have
You're
virtue.
Special. Yeah.
You're everybody wants to be a good person. Well, today that means be mentally ill or be trans or literally, I think trans is a mental illness. So it's literally like one or the other. That's some kind of like to have body dysmorphia is a mental illness. There are so few people who have like that hormonal issue or where they're born with kind of like two sexes and it's sort of not clear. A lot of these people are finding that they're coming to having this problem starting in puberty, not before, they're not screwed up. They're just like, they're having a mental problem. They don't feel comfortable in their own skin and they're deciding it must be their sex. And they're being convinced of this by the culture at large. So that is like a whole nother show, but have one of these mental illnesses, have a sexual deviancy, have, something, all of these things that are apart from just kind of normal, healthy person is what is now regarded as good. It's crazy.
It's sickening. And it's a way, because everyone wants to stand out in groups. Like this is a natural human behavior, especially as a teenager. You know, it used to be, hey, I want to be the captain of the football team, or I want to be the prom queen or whatever. But in an online world where you want to stand out in a chat room or in a social media, you need to go to more and more extreme levels of provocativeness in order to stand out, whether you're either provoking people or you've got some other, like you said, like a victim currency. Now, since that's become the currency of the realm, like victimhood, like you need more and more deviance and more and more extreme levels of some kind of problem or difference or some intersectional category. And then now you're special and you feel special about yourself.
How do you explain how, if men and women are biologically different and women have this tendency to fight relationally and men directly and aggressively, violently, physically, how do you explain why all these men or boys are getting sucked into this?
Because they want to get girls. No, I mean, so they have.
You know what? I wouldn't doubt that is a huge part of it. Like they want to get girls like they always did. And this is how you can't just be a guy anymore.
Yeah, because in this framework, I mean,
although you can, that's what they don't realize. You can. If a man acts like a man, they're still gonna get girls.
But acting like a man,
women can't help but be attracted to.
Isn't that a person-to-person relationship though? Like if I'm in a bar or, in like physical contact at a party, I assume men will act more like men around women in order to attract women. But if you're in an online forum, what are you going to do? Like take your shirt off or something and say, look at me, I'm strong. I mean, I think it's a way to probably appeal to that. But
what are you going to say? I'm mentally ill, therefore date me?
I think,
I mean,
no, I think that's I'm sure in some communities, like maybe in the more like woke sub communities that are like deeply leftist, that might fly. But, my personal experience is that even in like with left-wing people, this is kind of an interesting thing. I wish I was a psychologist who could do experiments like this, but like when I was in college and you'd be in like left-wing groups and stuff like that, and you have this like this ethos that's like, no, feminism and everyone's equal and blah, 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 you would still see the male-female dynamic. It was still, and this is what always confounded me too, is like, you go to the coffee shop with all the commies and, or like the humanities type people. And it's still the guy that walks in with long hair and cool clothes and he's decked out, that all the little woke SJW type girls would still be like, ooh, you could tell that they were still fawning over the masculine, like they couldn't
Most
turn that
masculine
gene
guy
off.
will win. No,
and,
you
and
can't.
like the loser dude that comes in, with like pink hair or something like that. Okay, he's got all the points, for being like
totally
the most punk rock guy. He's not getting
I believe
women.
that 100%. And I think these guys that think that by feminizing themselves and by having a mental illness, making one up if they don't have one, I think if they think that that's going to serve them with women, they're wrong. I think I think they're wrong. Ultimately, women like masculinity.
I think even the most woke women, you're going to find, like, you peel the onion back a little bit. I think there's very few women who really want those traits in a man. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the society's completely left me behind. Maybe we are old. I'm just projecting this onto kids.
Of course.
But I have two sons. I have a teenage son and stuff, and I can see the world he's in and stuff. And not that I'm an expert on it or anything, but I mean, I still see it. And I just don't think you're changing that part of humanity. Maybe that'll save us.
Human, like biology will save us.
Maybe biology and just like the desire for men to really just get laid as teenagers will turn men back into men or something. I don't know.
Yeah. So it's a really interesting article. I can't verify it. I can't say if it's true or not. He puts out a lot of examples. It's chilling how the stuff he describes is exactly what we're living today in the wider culture. And I think it is fascinating to see at least a theory and like exactly how it might have worked mechanically, how we end up with this just permeating our culture. And he thinks it's really important that we see this and understand this in order to fight it, because if we know that what we're fighting is literally like mentally ill girl culture, it's much easier to stand up against it and like you'll know what to say when some of the stuff comes up. You won't be lured into the trap of thinking that this is not knowing how to handle it, or you have to regard it as this is sick.
This is clearly unhealthy behavior. It's unhealthy psychology. It's clinically unhealthy. It's like the core causes of depression and anxiety in teens that are well known and well understood in the psychology community. This is what we're dealing with. It's not that hard, but they've managed to impart it into the culture.
He mentioned at the end of his article that Milo Yiannopoulos was one person on the right who understood this, which I thought was interesting because I thought, he was a really powerful cultural voice. And they really took him down. I mean, he's just totally lost it. I'm trying to think if I can find this quote from Milo here. But he, every once in a while, somebody comes along that really gets culture and they're always destroyed. They're taken down because they cannot be allowed to exist. But here's the quote from Milo. When Milo challenged his protesters to argue with him countless times on his tour, he knew that they not only wouldn't, but also that they couldn't. They come from an utterly intellectual shutdown world of Tumblr and trigger warnings and the purging of dissent in which they have only learned to recite jargon. So kind of understanding that they can't argue. They don't have any experience arguing. They don't have any background doing it. Their only defense is to be triggered and to kick you out.
And well, this is why they married it with critical race theory, because critical race theory tells us that there's no such thing as an argument. Everything is from a power hierarchy crushing other people. So, there's no like, hey, let's talk about this and debate and have an argument. It's no, you're part of the white male patriarchy that's a power hierarchy and you're dominating me. And I just need to lash out at you and try and undermine your power and take that power away from you.
Yeah, this is where debate has gone.
So the trigger culture and the cancel thing is perfectly married for that. Because like, I don't have to argue now. I just shut you down. I just suppress you.
And so I think you can belittle them by forcing them to argue or asking them to argue with you and debate. And if you know that, then that'll strengthen your own resolve to get your points in order. And when you're in a situation at work or whatever, have your points, push the argument. If you're going to go challenge critical race theory at a school board or something, get your points in order, stay calm, require them to debate you, and you'll win because they can't. Like, if you really integrate that, you'll go in more powerful and feeling, you'll have the motive, like you'll know that they can't push back on you, that it would be impossible for them to win. And you'll go in with more confidence, I think. My computer's about to die. 1 second. Say something, Doug.
The whole idea of power hierarchies being the basis of like critical race theory, which was a theory propounded by like legal scholars at Harvard and stuff like that, that theory is self-contradictory, because if that's true, that these ideas come from power hierarchies, well, critical race theory came from a power hierarchy. So how can we trust that? Like, what's the validation? What's the proof of critical race theory? Like, why is a power hierarchy wrong? Like, what's the ethical argument against, or what ethical argument do postmodernists and critical race theorists make to argue against power hierarchies, against anything? They believe in ethical relativism, and they believe there's no truth and there's no systematic means of ascertaining truth. So their whole system is self-contradictory.
Yeah. Well said.
Got that?
As I rushed around to get my power cord.
You got it.
Huh?
Let me repeat.
Anyway, I will put a link to that really fascinating piece. Again, it's in American Greatness. It's called From What Lab Did Cancel Culture Leak by Bill Hurrell. Hurrell. So yeah. We have anything else to talk about before we shut down our podcast? No,
glad to see you back. Glad to see you're feeling a little bit better. I hope you continue on the upward path here.
Thank you very much. I think do you want to talk about what you've been doing?
Yeah, I was doing the Rat Cap podcast, and I took a break for about a month or two here. I haven't done one in a while, and I have too many topics. So we've
both been on a break.
I'm going to be on Friday. I'm going to be interviewed, I think, on a podcast called The Secular Foxhole, and but my own podcast I'll be starting again probably within the next week or so, and picking up on a lot of the topics that I've been engaged on. So the Rat Cap podcast.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next time we put one of these together.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
There is a house called the House of Sunny. It's filled with satire and fun. It's been the demise of bad ideas, and we'll know what's right when she's done. So download this free podcast now, and give perspectives you may lack. It's concise and right, and achieves world peace, guaranteed all your money back. Last time, ready?